the principal driver here is that Trump wants a deal. He portrays himself as a man who does deals. He is impatient in Ukraine, and he sees the easiest way of getting a deal to give essentially what Putin wants in terms of Ukraine giving up territory.
This may be a pivotal moment in the war in Ukraine, and a moment when Europe moves away from relying on the US for its military strength. Depending on how these next few days play out, in the very best case scenario, there could eventually be peace in Ukraine. Sir Keir Starmer and other European leaders are really wrestling with what senior diplomats say is the most critical moment in the nearly 4-year Ukraine war.
Well, let's speak now to the Times World Affairs editor, Catherine Philp, who joins us from eastern Ukraine. Morning, Catherine.
Good morning.
Good to speak to you. First of all, just tell us what the situation is like where you are, what you're hearing, the general sense you're getting from Ukrainians you're speaking to.
Yeah, so we've been in the last couple of days close to Pokrovsk, which is where the fiercest fighting is going on between the Russians and Ukrainians. The Ukrainians are still in the fight there, despite Moscow's claims to have taken the whole city, which they've dismissed as a propaganda exercise in order to convince Trump that Ukraine has no cards left. So they're still there, but things are not looking good. They have had to withdraw from certain positions. They are under a great deal of pressure. I would say, however, that when it comes to talking about the negotiations, there is absolutely no appetite amongst the people fighting themselves to withdraw. And the reason being, it's not because they're not exhausted or that they don't want to go home. They say, if we go home now and the Russians come, we'll be back here. This won't end.
Senior diplomats have told the Times today that this is the most critical moment of the war so far. Would you agree with that assessment?
I think so, given that, we have seen several rounds of this where Trump has set deadlines and then they've passed. And this time he's saying Christmas. But it does seem that his patience really is wearing very thin, and that he has jumped back onto seeing the war through Russian eyes. He's back to appearing to ally his desires or his hopes for the end of the war with those of Moscow. So it is a dangerous situation. And nobody here can make head or tail of what a free economic zone is supposed to be. This suggestion the Americans have apparently made to the Ukrainians about what happens in that space that they would withdraw from. It is a very peculiar term. It suggests inward investment, which is highly unlikely to happen in a place that's devastated by war and has no security. But it is consistent, or appears to be consistent, with Donald Trump's his manner of looking at everything through a business lens, and the fact that he may still be looking at this as some kind of business opportunity that he can strike with the Russians.
And the Ukrainians you speak to, what do they make of talk of potential territorial concessions, the suggestions of any deal being put to the Ukrainian people through a referendum?
There is enormous resistance here, even amongst people who do not particularly like or support Zelensky as a politician. There's enormous resistance to the notion of holding an election right now, and nobody can see how you do it under these circumstances, not only with the country under attack, but also large areas of the country under occupation, which presumably would not be able to vote. It's interesting that when you speak to soldiers, it seems to be more of an appetite to not to concede any territory and to fight on. And I think that is really symptomatic of them sort of taking everything day by day and being committed to the land they're fighting for. With civilians, I think there's a slightly more nuanced picture. And often, just yesterday, someone said to me, well, Donbass is not ours anymore, it's gone. So perhaps a bit more realism in amongst civilians. But also soldiers did say to me yesterday, we're not going to be able to reclaim the land we've lost. It's really a question of edging towards whether there's any appetite towards actually formalising that. But there is a recognition that, they are on the back foot, and what is gone, they don't currently see any military means to take it back.
You mentioned that even opponents of Zelensky don't like the idea of an election now. Do they think there should be a referendum on any peace deal, or do they trust Zelensky just to do it himself? Because he's suggesting a referendum.
I asked the question about trust, and there does seem to be trust in him, but that is partly, it's certainly partly how he's held out over the last year against this pressure from Trump, but also there's a feeling that he's the person who has the relationships with foreign leaders, perhaps not Trump, but certainly the European leaders, and that it would be unwise to change horses. Now, with a referendum, it's really it's the same technical issues. It's not that they don't necessarily want to change leader. It's the process of doing it that is very, very hard to imagine how you would do that. I mean, where I am at the moment, there are Shahed strikes. These are the kamikaze drones that the Russians have, and I'm currently quite away from the front line, but there's these Shahed drone attacks all the time. They're currently hitting the rail network, which is critical to getting things around the country and would be critical in staging an election. They're going after infrastructure. There's even in Kyiv, the capital, there's 16 hours a day without electricity. I mean, all these factors make it very hard to see how you could feasibly hold a popular vote.
Finally, before I let you go, Catherine, Keir Starmer is meeting the Belgian Prime Minister in Downing Street today, trying to get movement on these frozen Russian assets, which primarily are in Belgium. Are you getting a sense there is some movement on this?
I am getting that sense partly out of a kind of a desperation on the part of Europe. Belgium has well-known objections to this, and they're to do with the legalities of it, whether it would have a freezing effect on people putting their money in Belgium in the future, because there would be this precedent of money being seized, and the legalities of that are complicated. However, I think that there is an appetite within Europe getting to grips with the reality of the Trump administration's attitude towards Ukraine, for them to get their hands on that frozen money on Ukraine's behalf before the Americans make any move to. Now, they're able to do that at the moment because it is in Belgium mostly. It's within the EU, so it's theirs to take. That may get more complicated if the rift between Europe and America grows, and Trump sees that money as a useful asset for America to use to expand its business interests in Ukraine.
Really interesting, Catherine, as ever. Thank you so much. That is the Times World Affairs editor, Catherine Philp, speaking to us live from eastern Ukraine.
The Times reports this morning that from Downing Street to the Elysee Palace and the German Chancellery, routine business has been put on hold as Sir Keir Starmer and other leaders grapple with what diplomats say is the most critical moment in the Ukraine war. Let's speak to the UK's former National Security Advisor, Lord Ricketts. Good morning.
Good morning.
I want to actually reflect on Catherine mentioning a couple of times there about the approach of the Trump administration to all of this, that they're looking at this through a business lens and a business opportunity. And if there's a business opportunity to be won here, as far as the US is concerned, that will be the key to unlocking progress. Is there any merit in that unconventional approach?
Well, Trump does bring unconventional approaches, and we've seen that in the way he put at least a temporary end to the war in Gaza. But I think the principal driver here is that Trump wants a deal. He portrays himself as a man who does deals. He is impatient in Ukraine, and he sees the easiest way of getting a deal to give essentially what Putin wants in terms of Ukraine giving up territory. Business is never very far away when Trump deals are concerned. But the idea that there is a real business opportunity, as Catherine was saying to you just now, in the terribly smashed, damaged, war-ridden areas of the Donbass that are still where the Ukrainian troops are holding on, I mean, that seems to me to be very, very far-fetched indeed. I think American eyes are on that 130 billion of frozen Russian assets, and whether by unfreezing them in some way, there could be opportunities for investment funds controlled by the Americans. So yes, business is part of it, but I think getting to a deal, any deal, is really what's driving Trump.
Peter, I wonder if I could ask you just to help us understand what will be happening within Downing Street and within these kind of the national security infrastructure right now, based on this reporting from the Times that actually routine business is on hold. There's a determination to make some progress here. I suppose the best case scenario is that we could end up with peace in Ukraine, which obviously would be wonderful in and of itself as a principle, notwithstanding the details of how we got there. But help us understand who is speaking to whom. Who do you call first? How do you rally the French leader, the German leader, with President Zelensky? What are the nature of the conversations that need to be happening today?
Well, I think they are trying to maintain links between Zelensky and the White House. And since the Americans are tending to talk to the Russians alone without involving us, that then is always a problem. But essentially, it will be the national security advisors of those countries talking to each other. And from time to time, the heads of government as well, but not only talking to the Europeans, but also talking to the Americans. So constant network of discussion going on, involving the senior officials and then bringing in the leaders when they have to.
Yeah, and can you tell us how they talk to each other, what they talk about? Is it incremental? How long will a conversation be? Is it a snatched couple of minutes on the phone here, or is it a formal sit-down 1 hour phone call later on in the day? I don't know how. The logistics of this fascinate me, the jigsaw puzzle that this is.
Well, yes, and I don't know how it's changed since my day, but I suspect that there will be a plan on the table. There's a Ukrainian/European plan that we told has been put to the White House. That will have been elaborated, I imagine, in long 3-way, 4-way conversations between Ukrainian, British, French, German experts, national security advisors, and then reviewed by leaders. And we hear that the leaders talk, if not every day, then almost every day. And then there will be the regular talks with Trump and the White House. Because despite all that rhetoric in the US national security strategy, it does seem that Trump is still in touch in a regular way with the European leaders he's come to know, and as far as we can see, to like. So it'll be a series of collective calls going on, I'm sure, every day at working level, trying to work with the Ukrainians to finalize a plan which seeks to put in enough to keep the Americans interested while preserving Ukraine's national interests. And that's the critical thing. The 28-point plan we heard about from Witkoff and the Russians certainly didn't preserve Ukraine's vital interests. And the Europeans are working together like this to try and pull it back to something which could conceivably be acceptable to Ukraine.
Keeping the Americans interested. A noble ambition in and of itself. Lord Ricketts, thank you so much. Thanks for your time.